you. You make it sound very, very official. So like she said, I get to be an instructional innovation coach. And so I actually work with teachers of lots of different grade levels. Mainly I work with middle school, but this past year I've also gotten to work with elementary teachers. I taught science for 11 years, and of course, we discovered Edulastic right after I stopped teaching science. I would have absolutely loved to have this tool, but it's been really exciting to see how it has changed and evolved as far as how we've used it. And so I get to go and show all the teachers the cool new things that they can do with Edulastic. So the main thing I want to show everybody is how you can use Edulastic for online lab reports. I know it can be really difficult sometimes when your students are doing labs to get things written out. And yeah, exactly. Bought the classroom and then the district bought it. That's happened to several of our teachers too. Just saw that, Mike. But how we can use Edulastic to have students complete lab reports. There are so many ways they can do that with the 30 different types of questions. And so I've got 2 different labs I'm going to show you, and each one uses some different tools. And these are ones that I have used with teachers at my school. Okay, so you should be able to see here my dashboard here. The first lab I wanted to show you is this heat lab report right here. The elastic potential energy lab is very similar as far as how the setup is. I actually used one of the questions. Let me slide this out of the way here. So we're going to just go ahead and preview it really quickly, and I'll explain some of the questions as we go through. So this one actually had the students jump right in. They had already answered some questions, and we were able to use the graph tool. So this is the graph plotter. There's multiple kinds of questions. This one specifically is the plotter. And what I love is it gives you the option to have them plot either a bar graph or a line graph. And you're able to go in and actually add your axis labels here. So we're able to put the temperature, it's in degrees Celsius, over time here. And I was able to give them the question, or should be up here, the directions that this is a graph of the water, and that this was the light was turned on. So this is one where they have a container of sand and a container of water, and the heat lamp on them, and they're looking at which one holds the temperature, so which one absorbs the heat quicker, and then which one would lose it more quickly. And what's great is the students are able to actually drag and say, okay, well, maybe it starts here. And so they're actually graphing their own data. And I love this because I don't have to rely on them to try to make the graph. This lab is not assessing whether or not they can make a graph. This lab is trying to assess, can they plot the data that they're gathering? And so to me, that's a really important distinction when you're looking at what kind of information you're actually trying to assess. And so that's, again, one reason why I love having this type of question here. So we're going to flip through a couple more. So this one, they were doing the same thing, but with the sand. Looks like I did a little bit better job of marking out my lines here on the grid on the background. And then after that, I was able to then add some of those other questions. So what were your constants in the lab? Which one heated up faster? So I'm still asking all of those same kinds of questions that I would add. This wouldn't be a pre-lab. This would be for more of that in the middle of their lab. So while they're working on this, one of the students in a group would actually have this. And then this was, they're going through and writing some scientific problems. And then at the end, of course, I had to put everybody's name that was in that group. So that's that graph piece, and that's one a lot of us have used, maybe not in this specific format, but we always have them graph when they're creating labs. And so it's nice to give them the graph and let them interact with it. And you can always print these as well when they're finished if you want them to have a hard copy. And so one other piece that we use when we are doing science labs, this is going to be things like the PreLab Discussion, which was mentioned before. This one has the PreLab Discussion, and it also has a really neat data table piece that I want to show you as well. So it was mentioned earlier, using this essay, not essay style, wrong one. And now I am blanking on the name of this question. What is the name? You're killing me.
Passage-based question type.
Passage-based. And so for your pre-lab, you're able to put in any kind of information over here. Like they were showing before, you could put a video, could be your introduction. I've used articles. I love that when you're adding your information over here, you can put in links. We use things like Science News for Students and give them articles about, real world connection. And then now they have something to connect it to in the real world. This is why we're doing this lab, because it relates back to this problem that's really happening. And then you have just your basic, here's your background information, energy is the ability to do work. And so you really have a lot of flexibility on what information you want them to have before they get started. And exactly, those next gen science standards, there's a lot of information about, or a lot of content. They want you to connect it back to the real world. You see that a lot. So I want to just jump ahead a little bit. You can see I gave them another question here. The next thing, and I know a lot of us do this too, then how do you do all of those different parts of the scientific method? So for the hypothesis, we generally would just do a basic drag and drop. So I actually took a screenshot of this. I used my snipping tool and added it as an image in the background. And then we just added all of the different options that they might choose when they're writing their hypothesis. And so they can simply drag and drop into each part. So if the distance is bigger, and they can go through, and there's all the options that they could possibly choose from there. This is what I really wanted to show you on this particular section. So we struggled for a while trying to figure out how can we put a data table into Edulastic that our students could put their information into that was still flexible enough for them to fill in all the different parts and still have the look and feel that we're used to of a data table. And so this is what we came up with. We just inserted a table, and then each one of these is a numeric response, one of the little text boxes for numeric response. And this way they can, with each trial, they can say, okay, for trial 1 at 10 centimeters, maybe it went 20 centimeters, trial 2, and they can go in and add all of their numbers. And again, they can do it on an iPad, so they have the flexibility to move around. If it's a lab where they're up and moving, they still have that flexibility, or even on a laptop. And so they can go through and do all of these. The nice thing with this question, and this is something I want to point out, anytime you're creating questions like these, where you have to put in a little bit of time to build the question, it's nice that I know I can always go back and reuse this question. I can duplicate this question, and I may have to go in and tweak this. I may go in and make some tweaks here or down the sides, but it's very simple because now I already have that framework. And that makes a world of difference when you're pulling a lab together. So even just spending some time building a few of these questions that are just the framework, then you can really very easily pull them in and add your labels. So I love that with these questions here. And then again, we just added a few extra questions. And here's another graphing. I prefer the one we did in the heat lab, but this is another option here. The only reason I don't like this type of graphing question as much is just because you don't have your axis labels. So something to keep in mind, you know, our science hearts, we love a labeled axis for any kind of graph. So, but there are different kinds. So you do have to kind of take a look and see which one will best fit your needs for that lab. And yes, these are paperless labs. The students do not have to have any papers, nothing to spill stuff on or lose. And then before I jump into the next lab, I want to show you this the next piece, because it's a very cool thing that most people forget. Right here, we have, this is an essay style question. And what I love is that if you notice all these different types of things that our students can put into their answers with our equations. And this is what we're going to focus on. I'm going to pull up this other lab and show you an example. But this right here is a piece that a lot of people forget. Not only can I add pictures when I have a 4-year-old screaming at me. Go ask your brother. Sorry about that.
No
Not
worries.
only can we add images for questions, but our students can do images as a response as well. And this is something that I stumbled upon accidentally. I was working with a teacher, a foreign language teacher actually, and we're working on a totally different problem. And what was interesting is all of a sudden she saw it and said, well, wait a minute, does that mean I can have my students answer with pictures too? And I said, well, I don't know. And we grabbed an iPad and tried it out, and they really can, and it's pretty phenomenal. So this is from a frog dissection lab. I had 7th grade science teachers that were really upset and frustrated because they said there's really nothing we can do except give them a picture. I don't know if they're actually finding the things on the frog. I have no way to know how much they're actually able to do and label and identify on their own. And I said, well, I think we have a solution for that. This was right after I had met with the foreign language teacher. And so I pulled out the iPad and showed them that they can actually have one of their students, we pair them up. So one person is actually doing the cutting, and one person has the iPad. And so they, once they get the frog all cut up, they do it with earthworms too, they can take a picture on the iPad. And the iPads, and I'm sure other devices as well, they have that awesome markup tool. If you've never seen it, we'll take a look. But the markup tool, they can put text. They don't have to ink, because I hate trying to read students inking when they try to write with their finger. But they can actually insert text. The Apple products also have a magnifier, so they can zoom in on something. And so for this, we're able to say, okay, you need to put an arrow and label the mouth on the external picture, where are the eardrums, where are the eyes, all of those different pieces. And so, and they can submit it. Too bad, I'll get it for you in a minute. And so they're able to then put in their observations here. And I love, so this is, again, not only that, but this is a different version, but we had one lab where we were able to even put in little video clips of things like, how do you actually cut your frog correctly? They never do that right. Most of the time they end up cutting way down here, or they cut way up here. And so we're able to give them, here's an image of exactly what you're supposed to do. And then, here's all your directions. Take a picture. So this was the first time we were able to really say, I know that these two kids know where the heart is, for example, because they took a picture of their own frog and labeled it. And so that was just one of those brand new features that really wasn't brand new, but it was brand new to us, and we forget about it a lot. And it's an easy one to pull into lots of different subject areas, but it's especially helpful when we're looking at science labs and how we can turn that into something that's paperless, something that really it's not just answering questions, and it's not just doing it electronically, but it's actually giving us more information than we possibly could have gotten if they had done it on paper. Because no matter how good of an artist they are, our students are not going to be able to sketch and identify the same as they can taking a picture. So that is really, for me, that's just one of the most exciting things that we have found to use Edulastic for outside of assessments. There's, again, lots of ways you can tweak it and change it and use it. And I would love to see more science labs in the library, in the assessment library of Edulastic. These are available. You can copy mine questions and tweak them and change them. But I would highly suggest you take the time to check it out. It's very applicable. And that's pretty much all I've got. Unless there's any questions. I don't think we had any. Were there any other ones in the chat?
There was a question about how would you grade the passage? The passage-based question.
So for that one, it's actually, we don't actually grade the passage. The passage is the part that I put in for their PreLab discussion, and then I have the questions that rotate through that it asks them about. And I believe that was on this one. And yes, exactly, Mike. They don't have to try and borrow pencils from one another, which is great when their hands are all covered in goo. Let's see. There we go. So you can see on the PreLab questions here, this is not the part that I'm grading. That's the part I've put in for them. But this is where I'm going to add questions for them based off of that. The labs are another awesome question type that I haven't been able to put in yet, but I'm going to find a lab where it works, is the drawing one. I really want to see some of those drawing pieces, how powerful that can be in a lab setting. Do I have a tag? I don't think that I have. I feel like I need to go back now after you were talking about tags earlier, and actually tag them, probably just, I don't even know, maybe just with lab, because really that's what they are. They're all going to be science labs. So
I believe you can search by author too. So Chelsea, if your name's on there, they can search for that in the search bar.
And the titles of all of them have the word lab in them. So all of them are going to be, frog dissection lab or all of those. So.